I haven't done a live video for so long, I can't remember how. But no, it's a pleasure to be with everyone today. Tavi, I got to say, my favorite chart in your whole deck was, you guessed it, zinc. I
Tell
I
me what you
told Tavi,
told me.
I told Tavi earlier today. It's like all these metals on the periodic table are increasing in value, but zinc's been just holding tough. It's because the best looking gal always shows up last to the ball. Okay. So wait, hold on to your horses. Zinc is going to perform.
We're
And
all married, guys.
oh yeah. Oh, oops. Okay. Um, Look, today I've got a hard stop. I am in Whitehorse, believe it or not, in the Yukon, and I'm heading up to Dawson in about an hour and 25 minutes. And I have to skippity doo through this, hop in a cab, get to the airport, and fly to Dawson for a convention. I'm not sure it's a convention per se. It's an investment tour that the government here in the Yukon put together. It's a group called Invest Yukon, and they invited me up. I think there's quite a few people that they've asked to come on this, but we're going to be looking at a number of Yukon companies. I think most of the Yukon explorers are going to be present at this in one way, shape, or form. We're going to go. We're going to have a meeting in Dawson, but we're also going to go out in the field, and I get to have a look at several of the stories in the field up close, which is really exciting. Um, I just I started like looking back at Snowline. The whole view around the Yukon is that this is going to be ground zero in terms of exploration and exciting discoveries made for this gold cycle. Okay, I stick firmly to that. It takes a while, it takes 2, 3, 4, or 5 years for these things to play out, but I think we're seeing that today. Okay, I'm really excited about seeing a lot of companies. I'm going to talk about some of them today, and I really think that once we get through these discoveries, get a large number of these things um, made, and into the pipeline for gold development. I think people are going to look back and go, "Wow, that was indeed the beginning." That, let's call it 2021 ish period, was really the beginning of the development of this world class gold district. Now, before I start down the path to talking about some of the Yukon stories, I'm actually going to start with Blue Lagoon because I spent the better part of 2.5 days in British Columbia and at Blue Lagoon's Dome Mountain project. This is in kind of west central British Columbia. When we first took our investment here, this is going back, I think, 4.5, 5 years ago. It was really centered around the exploration potential of this Dome Mountain project, and I talked about it at length back in that day. I talked about how this particular style of deposit is a subset of alkaline gold systems. It's what we call a carbonate base metal gold deposit, and it's a vein system or a sheeted vein system. It's not tightly space sheeted veins, but it's widely space sheeted veins over a large footprint, and these systems are just some of the most intriguing gold deposits I can think of because they can be quite large. They've got that alkaline magma association, which I've talked about repeatedly. So that's going for them. But they also have just typically have a lot of veins that can be developed, or like can host resource. So examples, Baritica down in Colombia, which was a great story, sold to ZGM Mining a few years back, and now is in production. Even things like Porgera in New Guinea is an example. Am I saying that Blue Lagoon definitely has something like a Porgera at Dome Mountain? Well, not, I can't stick my neck out like that, but do I think it's something special? Yes, I do. Now, I'm going to fess up here. Okay, when the company first came to us, they said they wanted to put their existing resource, which is on the Boulder vein, at Dome Mountain into production. I said, "Gee, guys, it's tough. It's tough to permit things like this. It's tough for a little junior company to do that. Why don't you focus on exploration?" And they did. They did for the better part of 2.5 years. I think they raised money and drilled and they had very good luck. They had a lot of really nice intercepts, but they kind of put the whole development side of the story on the back burner. But in 2023, I'm going to give Rana and Bill and all the team there full credit. They say, you know what, the market's tough. It's tough to raise money. Can't raise money for exploration. Let's use the remaining resources we have to endeavor to permit this small scale mine. And they did all the hard work that's involved, studies and whatnot, and they got it approved, which is just astounding. I think it was either late last year or early this year when they got their basically got permits to reopen this Dome Mountain mine. And by the way, there's my hat. Okay, uh, they managed to pull it off for a junior company. This is an extraordinary feat. They should be congratulated to the fullest. They did put out a news release about the opening. It came out just this morning, but it was actually about I don't know 24 or 48 hours ago when I was at site and enjoyed the ceremonies. So I'm going to walk you through a few pictures real quick. Go to the next slide. This is a ribbon cutting ceremony. Rana is actually one of the guys holding the scissors there to cut the ribbon. But I wanted to point out one gentleman. Not that there's not other important people on here, but there's one guy there with the black hat on. That is Wayne Kindred, and Wayne. I'm going to tell everybody this. Like, there's a secret to make projects work, is that you usually have one individual person who has a long-term vision and commitment, who's stuck with the project, through the tough times, the good times, everything in between, and has the vision to make something work. And it's this guy right here. Okay, now who is he? He's actually going to be the lead contract miner for this project. Okay, for Dome Mountain. But he has been with this project for nearly 30 years, like almost going on 3 decades. Okay, he has basically run through a mine plan in his head of how this should work for 30 years or nearly that. That's astounding. Okay, you want a successful project, you have visionaries, people that stick with something like this. So kudos to Wayne. Right on, man. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, one of the things I'm going to start with is actually a commitment that I would give Rana and his wife a lot of credit towards this, is really working hard with the First Nations here. They've done a fantastic job. This is a Lake Babine First Nations band. This is, right in the heart of, like I said, Western British Columbia. And there's multiple clans. In fact, there's 4 clans that are represented here, and they're shown on this slide. It's kind of hard to see the frog, but you can see the critters there. You got the bear, the beaver, the caribou, but then you also have a frog. He's kind of hard to see over there, but he's tucked in there. And this is what you see when you drive in the gate. I think it's pretty cool. I think they've done a good job. And when I was there, a lot of the workers are First Nations, which is great to see. Great to see. Go to the next slide. In fact, even at the opening ceremony, we had a good drumming performance by the First Nations. They came from all over, all of the different clans. That was part of the opening ceremony. Go to the next slide. And then, as you can see in this slide, all of the people up front there, that's First Nations. And there's Rana giving a speech. All right, so Rana and his team have done a good job here. Very, very professional, very good job. It's just a delight to see a successful mine opening, re-permitting and mine opening, and such support from the local Indigenous community. It's lovely. Okay, go to the next slide. All right, now just a little bit about how, what people don't know in the mining space, but needs to happen. And one of the things here was water treatment. It's absolutely vital that the company, as they develop this mine, that any waters coming out of the mine are treated. Okay, and they've built a state of the art, first class water treatment plant. The fellow who's running it is the guy in the orange just behind there, and kind of took the photo when he took a step back. But anyway, they have a state of the art water treatment plant here where they treat the water for all sorts of things. They treat it for any potential nitrates that might be residual nitrates in the water, but also any metals whatsoever. Basically, are stripped out of this thing. And this thing, once it's up and running, they can actually get underground and start mining. Okay, now this thing was basically being ramped up to its steady state performance, which should be any day now. But this is a critical step for any mine, and you can see they've done it in a very, very professional way. Go to the next slide. Here's your portal. Looks like something out of a ski lodge, but it's a very, very nicely done portal. The tour group, we had multiple tour groups. I happen to be with this group here. It it's just it reminds me of where I started. Actually started working in a gold mine in Colorado. It was almost the same scale, so it brought back a lot of memories for me about how small mines can actually be a very can be very successful, but it be a very important part of the mining industry. Go to the next slide. Here we are walking in the adit. They had, I've never seen this before, but they had lights the entire way back to the stope in the Boulder vein. It was kind of like a Christmas carnival or something. It was amazing to see. But here you can see everybody walking down the adit. Notice how tidy it is, how dry it is. There's no real water to speak of coming out. I think the thing makes something like 30 liters per minute or something, which in mining terms is like bugger all. It's absolutely nothing. Go to the next slide. We got a lecture on rock bolting, securing the roof and stuff. Boy, they were excited about rock bolting, and they gave us about a half-hour lecture on every aspect of how they make the mine safe. They've done a great job. Again, this is a very professional team, and they painstakingly went through every aspect of it to make sure we understood. All right, let's go to the next slide. This is kind of an interesting photo. I thought I would take this because it was just such a cool vantage. Basically, what we're doing is we're looking upwards. So this is almost straight up. It's looking up the what we call a raise. Okay, so the adit is a horizontal. It's not a tunnel goes clear through a mountain. By the way, okay, an adit goes in in a portion of that, like halfway or something. Okay, so an adit is just has the one opening. But then when you get into your workings where the vein is, you have to put raises up to start to block out pieces of the vein, and this happens to be one of the raises. And what you're looking at here is basically the full width of the vein. If you look at either side on the left and the right, you'll see that there's kind of a lighter gray rock. That's the quartz vein itself. Yeah, there's some bit of yellowish stuff in there too, which is host rock. But you get a sense of how thick and how continuous and how predictable this vein is. It is astounding. Getting to see it underground was really impressive. You can even see way up at the top, like again, we're looking up where the light dot is there. You can see the full thickness of the vein itself. And I think that from what I saw, the way this vein is structured, very sheet-like, continuous, and nice and fat, I think it should be readily mineable. It's not going to be, there's not too many challenges, I'll say, around identifying and mining something like this. All right, go to the next slide. Here's a picture of the Boulder vein down at the very end. This was at basically the first stope that's likely going to be developed. Again, look at how bright white that vein is, or light that vein is, compared to the wall rock, which is above it there. Easy to see, easy to pick. In fact, we talked about ore sorting. I think ore sorting could also be brought into the picture at some point. Now, how are they going to process this? Guess what? They're going to mine this. They're going to truck it, okay, to Nikola. Nikola is another publicly traded company. Peter Esping, who's the CEO there, was at site for this opening. I've known Peter for a few years now, real nice guy. And I think the collaboration they have between the two companies, meaning ore from the mine as well as an established, proven mill. And by the way, there was about 5,000 tons of material treated from Blue Lagoon at Nikola's mill a couple of years back. Okay, so we already know that rock from here can go through that mill, and they see good recoveries, makes a good product. It makes concentrates actually that are shipped overseas. Okay, so we know that the risks around milling in that whole part of this venture are minimized because of that. So I think again it bodes well for a successful operation. By the way, there was actually part of the release that it was at the first slide. I didn't mention it, but there was some actually financing or available financing made to Blue Lagoon out of prepayment against offtake, and that's through Ocean Partners, who's a good friend of ours at San Cristobal. Okay, so the guys at Ocean Partner are actually buyers, are going to be the buyers of the concentrate here, and they've made sure that Blue Lagoon has access to money, so they don't have, if there's any issues, they can have some money to draw on. I actually think they're going to pull this off pretty easily, so I'm not too worried. But it's nice to know that everybody's rowing in the same direction, and the company has a lot of available capital to make things go. All right, go to the next slide. Here's a close-up picture of the rock. What are we looking at here? Well, the white is quartz, okay, and then there's kind of a brownish color mineral in there. That's largely siderite, which is a carbonate, iron carbonate. Doesn't really have any economic value, nor does the quartz. But the sulfides, which are the darker gray that you see scattered through this, some of it's that kind of that dog tooth texture at the top, but others just little tiny fractures scattered through the quartz. Those sulfides are where the gold resides. The gold particles are actually very closely associated with the sulfides. So basically what you have to do to get the gold out of this rock is you mill up this rock. You basically crush and grind it down to powder. And then in the mill, they float concentrate. So they pull the sulfides and the gold out of this. They'll also probably get some through gravity recovery too. But a lot of the gold is going to end up in very precious metal rich concentrates that can be shipped overseas, and they fetch a premium because there's a high demand for precious metal rich concentrates these days. All right, so it's a very simple metallurgy, that's going to be, I think, again, very successful in a proven mill that's already operated. Go to the next slide. And they've also purchased the equipment they have. So basically, on site, they already have everything they need to get going. Okay, this happens to be the drill that they're going to use. Even have new drill bits on the end here. Like Wayne is chomping at the bit. In fact, Wayne is going to be your main driller, drill foreman here. And he described to me a really unique way that they're going to schedule things in the mine. They're actually going to have multiple stopes. Okay, so just so everybody's on the same page in terms of how this is going to unfold. Once the water treatment plant's up and running, probably here in a couple of weeks, say sometime early to mid-August, they'll actually start work, like underground work, mining. Okay, now the way this is going to happen is they have to put in development work. Okay, I don't want people have this view that you just go in and take rock out and you're mining. No. They got to put in some development work. What does that mean? They have to put in some ramps to get to different levels within the vein, and they actually have to open up stopes like those raises and stuff I showed. They have to get all of that in place before they can actually start producing ore. And when I talked to Wayne, he wants 5 active stopes at any given time. That's brilliant because that means they have 5 different vantages from which they can pull ore. They're talking about 150 tons a day, steady state production. That's not too bad. It's very manageable. Okay, with 5 stopes, it should be easily doable. But you always want to have 1 or 2 stopes that you're pulling ore out of while you're mucking around with the other stopes, either cleaning them out, putting new development, whatever. You need to have multiple places you're drawing ore from, so you constantly have that flow of ore. And I think he's got a really good plan. He also talked about the fact that they're going to have one guy or one team assigned to drilling, and then one team that will come in after and assigned to putting in the explosives, and then one team following up with mucking, basically pulling the rock out. In other words, there's going to be specialized teams to handle each one of those tasks instead of having just one team do the drilling and then explosives and then blast, the mucking. This will make it more efficient. Think of like a conveyor line, in mass production, something like that. And Wayne is a very smart guy. That's like the first time I've heard of something like this, but it's actually quite logical to have teams specialized in each one of these tasks, and they can just migrate from one spot to the next in this mine. It's a very small scale mine, so it's not hard, and it doesn't take long for them to move from one place to another, but it should make it much more efficient. So anyway, I found that intriguing. Go to the next slide. Can't have a discussion about opening a mine without seeing a little gold. Rana's wife put together a cake, or had a cake made. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. It's a cake with frosting, but it's been coated with gold leaf. I mean, that's real gold. Uh, I did have a little piece, in spite of being diabetic. I had a little piece. I gotta say, it was quite a thrill to eat a piece of gold foil cake. Anyway,
That's cool.
good luck. Yeah, it is pretty cool. Good luck to them. I think they're doing the right thing, and I think my gut says they're going to kill it. I think they'll do well. All right, let's go to the next slide. And now I got to really put my skates on here because I'm watching the time. Okay, Snowline is obviously the first, horse to bolt from the starting gate here up in the Yukon. I should say they're not the first, but they've certainly made a splash with the discovery at Valley, and now they've got it to a resource of 9 million ounces and change. And quite frankly, it's great grade. Looks like it has great economics from the PEA that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Et cetera, et cetera. Now, where do they go from here? Well, they have more exploration to do. As we know, they have a huge amount of land across. They have found a new one that I think looks really intriguing. The fact that they've kind of highlighted it in this one news release tells me that they're pretty stoked about it. So let's talk about the celestic target. Let's go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so here's some beautiful slides. I realize the photographs are kind of small. If you ever want to see bigger version, just go to the news release that I clipped this from, which came out a few days ago. All right, but the celestic target is actually on the Cynthia project. Cynthia is a block of ground they picked up from, oh boy, Tavi or Kevin, do you remember the group that had this a few years back? I can't think of what they were called. They were the ones exploring over in Golden Triangle. Can't remember. Name flew out of my head. Oh well, doesn't matter. Anyway, they picked up Cynthia for bugger all, basically, from a group that was, was not all that incentivized
to strike point.
Thank you. Yeah, strike point. Okay, and now they've begun exploration there, and the celestic target has really turned up some interesting results. You can see in the upper left there's a piece of quartz vein. They do have the bismuthinite and tellurium minerals that we see at Valley, which is really intriguing, as well as good gold numbers. Okay, and then the other photos that you see there, each one of the photos, the bottom left and the two on the right, are sheeted quartz veins that look very much like Valley. Okay, so they're seeing, very similar stuff to Valley. This is exciting. Go to the next slide. And if you look at there we go. If you look at the plan map where they're finding this stuff, early days, but here's their intrusive. That yellow thing is the mapped intrusive. And then they've identified just in these blue blobs, these target areas. Now, the thing that was missing here, in my view, was a sense of scale. Okay. So what I did is I threw a little oval on there. That's the size of Valley. Okay, that oval is the size of Valley. Okay, so a lot of people are going, oh, those look kind of small. No. They're actually like you could have a valley or two in here. Okay, so basically you have an intrusion with probably some apophyses of a later intrusive coming up, and you see sheeted quartz veins with bismuthinite, gold, and stuff in multiple locations here. This looks pretty good early stage, but it sounds like they're going to try to advance this very quickly to drilling, and they got that intersection target up there off the edge too, which is basically out into the Hornfels. So lots of really ripe targets here. Maybe we'll see a new discovery out of the guys. All right, let's go to the next slide. Then we're going to jump forward to there we go to Sitka. Sitka had a couple of news releases just in the past week or so. I think they're kind of clearing the decks in terms of getting news out before all these investors show up. The first news release, which is down there at the bottom, talks about them drilling at the Coppermine River project in Nunavut. And I was aware they had this project, but I was not aware they were going to do some work on it this summer. But we did talk to them. It sounds like they have to do a kind of a minimalistic work program at Coppermine to maintain their tenement package. At first, I was thinking, oh, geez, I hope they don't spend a huge amount of money there and sacrifice money that you should be drilling over at RC. But it doesn't sound that way, which is good. I think also they're aware that there's a growing story over in Nunavut around this copper silver mineralization. What do I think of it? Look, stay tuned. I am digging into some of the copper stories, and I expect to be able to talk about some of those. There is a very interesting copper play developing in Nunavut. Nunavut's a tough town, guys. It's a very expensive place to work, but I've been looking at the copper stories, and I'm becoming more and more convinced that 2 or 3% copper, especially in the form that we see over there, like chalcocite, that can be upgraded to very high concentrates, is potentially economic. Okay, so I'm getting more interested in the Nunavut copper story, but I don't want Sitka to distract, like wander off in the weeds. It doesn't sound like they are. They're going to do a minimalistic program, and who knows? Maybe this land package that they have over there ends up being part of a bigger foray around the copper story in Nunavut in a year or two. Don't know. But I'd like to see them stick to their knitting, so to speak, in the Yukon. And they did put out a news release very quickly after the one about copper. They put out a news release about what they're seeing in their very aggressive drill program this year at RC. So let's go into the slides here. Next one. Okay, the copper is, I'm going to touch on it briefly. It's black shale hosted. So this is like the Kupferschiefer in Poland, which I've talked about, but also like the African copper belt copper. This is a sedimentary system. It was very large scale. They have a very critical piece of it. Like their land holding is right in the middle of the heart of this district. And they do have outcropping copper, which has been sampled in demonstrably very high grade. That's what you need in Nunavut, okay, to make something work. So again, it could be a very important piece of a newly developing exploration story in a hot market, which is not a bad thing. How they create value for our shareholders, we have yet to see. Maybe they fold it up with somebody else. I don't know. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. All right. Here's a map of the RC. So now we're back in the Yukon, and we're looking at all the wonderful targets they have in the RC project. This is up by Dawson. This is road accessible project too. So it's one of the reduced intrusive gold systems. And they're drilling 30,000 meters there this year. Now, what's really interesting is they've drilled a number of holes, and they put out an update, and they've talked about what they're seeing in a lot of these holes. At this Pulkoman project, or sorry, Rosgobble intrusive. There it is, Rosgobble. I got bifocals now, and I have to look down like this. I can barely read. That Rosgobble, they have some interesting early results from holes, visual results, I should say, and then even up at Blackjack and Iger. Okay, so we're going to just touch on this to try to catch up with where the company is at. Let's look at the next slide. Okay, so this is at Rosgobble. Okay, this is well south of Blackjack, but the company is pretty excited because guess what? They've hit a lot of visible gold. Observable gold in veinlets and veining in the Rosgobble intrusion. Notice that the entire geologic picture in the background is pink. Why is it pink? Because it's a big monzonite intrusion. It's basically all intrusive rock here. But inside of that, you have this zone that they've identified with these two drill holes that you see here with some pretty stout-looking visual gold occurrences. Do we have assays yet? No, but this is a good start, guys. This is a very good start in an area where you can see historic drilling. Look at that. There's one little pippy hole up there, like barely anything. And now we're seeing like big long runs, maybe 200-meter run of visible gold in these things. Could this be a brand new big scale discovery? Yeah, looks interesting. Okay, I'm very excited here. Go to the next slide. And then what's the next one there? Where are we? Next one. Am I frozen or oh there? Okay. This is back up at Blackjack. Okay. They had some good results, I think 200 meters and change, uh hole with a nice intercept 2 weeks ago. But you can see here, even the most recent drill hole they have, another whopper with a lot of visible gold. So lots more to come from here. Let's go to the next one. And then over at Eiger, I believe is the next one. There we go. At Eiger, which they do have some resource on, but is kind of lowish grade so far. But now they're seeing more, concentrated visible gold in the most recent drill hole they've done. Is this as exciting as the other ones that we saw just a minute ago? Not quite. There's not as many little gold stars there, but there's quite a few of them. You never know. Once they hit some high grade in a system like this, the key is to follow high grade, and maybe they'll have a nice, say, 100-meter run of high grade, and they can start chasing this thing down too. But the point is, the upside down cow is playing out. Okay, they've got Rosgobble, Blackjack, Eiger, all of these apophyses coming off are generating gold. That is crazy. Okay. Like the scale of this gold system is absolutely enormous. And I think this is going to be, continue to be one of the more exciting reduced intrusive stories as it unfolds, especially this year. Shows the market multi-million ounce potential in my view. Okay, go to the next slide. Oh boy, time's slipping fast. Sorry. Okay, Rackla. Okay, I talked about this a couple weeks ago. Look, back in I think November or maybe it was October last year, sometime they announced this discovery of this grad property. It's actually over in the Northwest Territories. For I think I slipped up and I might have said none of it or Yukon on one of my presentations. Didn't mean to. It's in the Northwest Territories. Okay, but it's the same belt. It's the easternmost extent of the Tintina, Tombstone Granite Belt. And the company found this grad target late last year, had a channel sample across with a kind of a high grade core. I think it was 180 meters of like 3.x gram. Absolutely remarkable. But the key is it's, from it outcrops at the valley floor all the way up to the top of the mountain. And the company was like, hey, we're going to get back in there next year and we're going to do some work on the mountain to see what's here. Okay. And this news release that you see here, I find extremely exciting because go to the next slide. You'll see that, there we go, that as they prospected up the mountain away from this channel that they had towards the base, they have found the sheeted veins continue all the way up this thing. Okay. These photographs, I realize most people look and think, what is this? Some guy standing at a, no, it's the stuff behind them that's important. It's the sheeted veins. And, what we're looking at, like as a geologist, any little kind of subtle fracture in there, when you see those fractures, even if they're kind of masked by a bit of orange coloration and stuff, what they're showing is this intrusion is absolutely riddled with sheeted veins. Okay. And, if you look at Craig Hart's work, Craig's kind of the brains behind reduced intrusive systems. His statement is 3 to 5 veins can make a gram per ton. They're seeing at least that here. 3 to 5 veins over a meter, like a meter length, can make a gram per ton in a lot of these systems. No guarantees, but that's kind of a rule of thumb. And they're certainly seeing that here. Okay, so this is exciting. This is way exciting because now we're starting to see some breadth. Okay, not only do they have this whopping channel sample at the base, they're starting to see mineralization all the way up to the top of the mountain. Go to the next slide. Let's look at the very top here. All right, the next image you see is actually them standing up on the top, and you can see, like in the left-hand side here, the foreground, those pieces of rock there, that's basically granite or monzonite that slipped down, but it's riddled with sheeted quartz vein. And the orange going on beyond that, that's just probably weathered sheeted, veins and quartz monzonite. So you can see they're on the top of the mountain, 400 meters down this slope, vertically. They had a channel sample of 180 meters at 3 grams. Like it doesn't take a lot of brain cells to get excited about this kind of thing. Okay, this, and then the photograph over here on the right. Look at those veins. Like you can't swing a cat without hitting a vein there. Okay, what do they have? Don't know yet. I think they're drilling. I think in this release they talk about starting to drill here shortly. I will be there in a few days. I think I'm there on the 16th. I'm very stoked about what these guys might have here. Just it's as excited as I can be. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, Trifecta is yet another reduced intrusive hunter in the Yukon, and they announced commencement of drilling at Mount Hinton. I will be visiting. I think we're going at the site. Yeah, I think I am. I think I'm going out here on 15th. I think so. Another one that I'm going to visit. Mount Hinton happens to be very close to Keno Hill, so it's like the view here is that the reduced intrusive that's at Mount Hinton is actually the mother, you know, well, the mothership, we'll say, of the fluids that went out and produced the Keno Hill deposit. But here at Mount Hinton, they have the gold rich end of the spectrum. You know, they got the intrusion itself, but also the gold rich part of the veins. This is an interesting story. You know, they have two targets here. One is the intrusion itself, you know, like a sheeted vein system, like typical valley, say, something like that. But they also have quartz gold veins that extend out towards the Keno Hill area and might be intermediate between the intrusive and the silver rich veins they have over at Keno Hill. And there is a lot of gold in those veins too. So they have both the veins and the kind of, you know, sheeted quartz intrusive hosted stuff in this target. This is very interesting. I really haven't, you know, it's interesting, but the one that still sticks in my mind for Trifecta is actually the rye target. And I say this because the photos that they had from rye from late last year with the sheeted veins and stuff and the gold numbers were just killer. And rye happens to be closer to valley. Okay, it's back over, you know, towards Snowline's end of the world. And I really hope the company gets a permit to drill a couple holes over at rye and can get a drill in there by end of season, which usually ends about mid September. Now that said, it's colder than it can be up here this summer. I am absolutely shocked how cold it is. I got my little jacket on here, and the wind's blowing like stink outside, and it was maybe 38 degrees or something when I landed. So hopefully winter doesn't start early. That would be very disappointing. Anyway, let's next slide. Okay, another story in the Yukon, different kind of story though. This is Yukon Metals. They're exploring their AZ property right now. They're actually drilling there. It's more of a target. You know what it is? What is it exactly? It's more of an intrusive related copper system. I'm not going to say porphyry because I think we're at a deeper level within this, but it's got a lot of contact skarn and you know, replacement style copper mineralization around an intrusive. And I believe the intrusive is of Cretaceous age, which in my book is interesting. Okay, for example, Pebble up in Alaska is Cretaceous age, Butte, Montana is Cretaceous age. I've talked to Kevin and Tavi endlessly about the age of some of these intrusions and how important they could be. No guarantees, but it is intriguing that this is likely of that age. They are finding more and more copper. I don't have a good sense though of exactly what they have yet. Like what's the, you know, the main focus here, at least from this news release. But I'm hoping to meet with the company and go out there and see for myself what these targets look like. Okay, they are finding copper over a broad area. I just need to wrap my mind around what exactly they're exploring and what the likelihood is of being successful. All right, so hopefully I'll learn something on this trip. Go to the next slide. Okay, Goliath. So I kind of finish up the Yukon. Sorry, that was a lot on the Yukon, but those are the company. A lot of the companies I'm going to be focused on. Oh, by the way, Banyan. I'm going to put a plug in for Banyan before I leave. They revised their resource, and they actually came out with a restated resource, like 4 odd million ounces at a gram gold, which is like that's about where Fort Knox started. So I'm actually quite intrigued with that. And they're also finding higher grades along an east-west granite dike corridor that they've identified. It, I'm going to see them, so I'm just letting people know. I used to kind of think, the grade's not quite there, but now I'm changing my tune quickly. I think Banyan might might be up and you know looking very attractive. Let's see. Okay, Goliath. Here we go. All right. So Goliath put some news out this week, and people are scratching their head. They're thinking, why on earth didn't they assay this core last year? Well, okay, this is a historic hole. If you read the headline, you got 8.31 gram per ton gold, and notice it's not gold equivalent. It is gold because this is dominantly gold style mineralization. Okay, and it's over 23 meters. That's a whopper. In fact, inside of that, there's some includes there. Again, I have to look at my glasses sideways here to see it, but it's 37.45 gram, which is 1.2 ounce per ton over 4 meters. Wow. Wowza. Now you'd think when you're drilling this hole, which was drilled, 24, this was drilled last year, you'd think, oh, okay, they'd probably see it and, sample it. And no, a lot of this rock was actually just kind of dark green, what we call calcsilicate rock. It's the thermally altered rock probably around an intrusion. Okay, what the heck is this crazy geologist saying? Okay, look, you look at that rock, and usually green rock is like the biggest turnoff in the world for a geologist. Like, oh god, forget it, no gold there. They have a very smart young geologist, Randall, who's got a good eye for VG, and he went back and started relogging some of these holes that they were simply in too big of a rush last year to log in detail. And he found this. Okay, I mean, this is crazy. So we have gold that's hosted by calcsilicate altered, I think these are volcanic rocks that are probably proximal to an intrusion. Remember, we're starting to see that intrusive link here. But we're seeing significant high-grade gold occur in pretty brownish, greenish looking rock, which is usually, the kiss of death. Again, now they're going back to look at many more intercepts such as this, and they're finding more and more. Okay, and they talk about this in the news release. I think this is absolutely remarkable. Okay, it is proving that there's yet a third style. So we got the sherbet style, which is quartz sulfide lodes, very thick quartz sulfide lodes. We got the intrusive dike style, which is the vertical dikes that are stockwork with quartz veins. And now we have the calcsilicate style, which is more of kind of a contact metamorphic style. We don't know exactly what the geometry is, but it looks very interesting. Go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, and you can see where this drill hole is. It's down kind of in the southeast, quadrant of the drill array that they have so far. So, but they're seeing it clear back over, like they're trying to show that there's some size to this. Okay, this particular style of mineralization could be extensive. It could go from all the way from 24,280 all the way back to 24,197. Maybe we got an overlooked style of gold mineralization that once they go back and relog a lot of these holes kind of emerges out of the ether and we see yet more gold mineralization. I mean, not that we didn't have enough to begin with, but I mean, this is just insane. Okay, this is pretty exciting stuff. All right, let's go to the next slide. Hannan put out an update specifically on Provista, which is alkaline gold system. I just love alkaline gold system. I always am so intrigued when a new one is found like this. This is in Peru. It's on the east side of the Andes, and they did some more work. Look, it's tough country, okay, but they did hand trenching. They got in there and they dug a trench 13.6 meters with 2.1 gram, and another one 4.6 meters with 7.2 grams. And this is in a zone of oxide or oxidized surface expression that is quite extensive. They've basically expanded this considerably. So let's go to the images on the next slide. Okay, there we go. The one on the left-hand side encompasses the entire zone of gold mineralization they found so far. You can see how it's defined. It's defined by samples in these trenches, but it's now 750 meters north-south, and it's actually quite extensive. Got a good width to it. It's not to say that it's cut off on the east and west. Even they don't know. They simply don't know yet. They haven't done much work there, but it's defined by surface samples as well as these trench samples. There's a zoom in of the trench area over here on the right hand side, and you can see where the new trenches are. They're actually hand dug again. This is tough country, but they went over to the east of where they had the initial trench, and they've dug these two other trenches again, 13.6 meters at 2 grams, and then 4.6 meters at 7 grams. That's amazing. I mean, this is a big, big, big oxide target. I can't wait till they can drill it. I'm just chomping at the bit. I think this could be a major new alkaline gold discovery. It's got scale to it. Don't forget, go to the next slide. I think the next slide shows the overall distribution. There we go. This is really, see the red thing? That's, yeah, the red thing there. That's actually where this stuff is. The bright red, I should say. There's a copper gold thing off to the side there, but it's that yellow dashed line. That's the footprint of the gold mineralization they found, alkaline gold mineralization. Absolutely enormous target. Like this is the size of the Cripple Creek district in Colorado. Brand new district, never been drilled, never been explored. And here they are continually finding more and more gold and really developing a good thesis here. It will take a little while to get permits, maybe 6 months, 8 months. I don't know how much longer. But once they go drill it, I think this is going to be an exciting story. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, Westward. And by the way, did I forget to say I was a director of any of those other? No, I'm not. Okay, I'm good on those. I am a Westward. I'm a chair of Westward. I talked about this in recent videos, the targeting, the thesis behind this. This is in Nevada, so we're shifting gears here. This is a Carlin type target right in the middle of the Cortez district. Cortez is a multi tens of millions of ounce district, and I think this area, this campfire target, is a critical piece of that, this Toyabe property. They are starting to drill, which is really nice to see. They have an aggressive program. There's some quotes in here by Colin, the CEO, but then Steve Kaler is down there at the bottom. Steve and I are good friends, go back many, many years, and he's one smart cookie. Okay, I think this first drill test, very conceptual play, but we will know soon if these guys maybe are onto a brand new gold system in a well-established multi tens of millions of ounce district. Let's look at the next slide, and I'll talk about the target just as a refresh. Okay, first of all, on the left-hand side there, you can see residual gravity. So gravity is highlighting for certain, a block of rock in the subsurface here. It's got a lot of character, a lot of dimples and texture to it, which is always good in my view. But you can see the campfire target that they've defined. It's more or less right in the core of this gravity anomaly. And the model here is what you see over here on the right-hand side, that there's a zone of upwelling fluids that brought in this Carlin-style mineralization and formed a blanket, like a mantle-like system. Now, it's underneath the upper plate rocks. In the cross-section there, you can see there's kind of a light pinkish purple. That would be upper plate rocks, but the target itself is actually hosted by the carbonate rocks below in the lower plate of this rock package. And that's the wind band formation. In particular, it's that wind band 5 unit, which is a critical host in this district. And this hole, if they hit wind band 5, it could be a very, very important test. Don't know. It's a speculative target. This is the first time this thing has really been drilled. It's going to be exciting, but you can see it has a really good geophysical expression as well as geochemical expression. They've also started to identify, look, there's a lot of arsenic showing up on the south end of that image. And that's, I think, some recent sampling they've done. That looks intriguing too down there. Maybe that starts to emerge too as a new target. But this campfire project, this is target number 1, and they're drilling now. Let's go to the next slide. Barksdale put out news. A lot of people think, and I'm director here, they think that the company is going to sleep. Actually, not at all. Okay, we have a plan now to take the company up to 67.5% ownership in the Sunnyside project. And the basis for that is basically looking at testing the more and more of the porphyry side of this, getting away from some of the deeper drilling, but testing the porphyry side of this target, which could allow us to meet the meterage that we need to get to that earn in and also the spend. Okay, so I won't go through these bullets one by one, but to save a long wind here, this Sunnyside project hosts the Sunnyside Porphyry, which is the core, the driver, the hub of the mineral district here at Hermosa. This intrusion, not only does it host mineralization, but it's also fed the mineralization that goes out and form the Taylor deposit, the world-class Taylor deposit, as well as the Peak copper deposit. So we have a very commanding land position in the core of this district. Go to the next slide. And I think this image, which Alan painstakingly put together, really shows this picture. Okay, so that pink on the left, that is our porphyry. And we do see large volumes of copper mineralization in there. There's some right at surface, a blanket of chalcocite, we call the chalcocite zone. So basically, we do have a sheet-like body of mineralization up top, but there's also some discrete blobs of mineralization down deeper in that porphyry. Not huge grades, but they are significant grades. Okay, now as we march to the right, where Taylor, which is kind of shown in the purple castus blob there, and the Peak deposits are, you can see we have a lot of ground. That blue line defines our ground on the left-hand side from S32, who's developing the Taylor mine on the right-hand side. Okay, we have a lot of ground that's very critical. In fact, we think the Taylor deposit and Peak deposits do project onto our ground. We did have some success in drill holes, historic drill holes too, that have hit the Taylor deposit and some Peak style mineralization. That hole we drilled late last year ended in Peak style mineralization. But we need to get back in there and drill some deep holes at some point. But in the meantime, we want to try to complete the earn in by drilling some shallow holes and getting to that 67% benchmark so that we have basically super majority control over the asset. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, Intrepid, also in Arizona. This is actually not far from Barksdale. It's a different district, but it's not far away. Intrepid put out some news from their Corral copper target and drilling that they've done here recently. They put out 216 meters of 0.71% copper, 0.28 gram per ton gold, and there's a bit of silver in there too, 5 grams silver. Look, inside of this are some very much higher grade intervals, sub-intervals. Okay, so I think it's really important to focus on those. And then you can see the hole below, hole 30, hit 0.35% copper over 98 meters, as well as 0.43 gram gold, again with sub-intervals that are higher grade. Okay, now look, the company takes a view that there's a porphyry lurking about somewhere here that generated this. Okay, this is where I differ from the company. I'm just going to stick my neck out, probably step on some toes, but I don't really care because I like to do that. I've talked about this system and what I think it is multiple times. There's a system in Arizona, Bisbee, which is like this, and I think this is more close to that. This looks like more like an IOCG's type system. Okay, sometimes you can world-class copper gold deposits of different types sitting right next to each other. Yeah, we have porphyries all over Arizona. Great district for porphyries. But we also have unusual systems like Bisbee, which are, in many people's views, some form of IOCG. And I think that this is more similar to that. I do take a different view. All right. So the company thinks it's porphyry. Yeah, I don't know. To each his own. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, here you can see the plan map on the left where they drilled. They are snuggled up to where they've done a lot of drilling in the past, and I really want to see these guys take some bold steps and chase this geology outwards. Okay, but here we can see the drill holes. The two drill holes that we had in the headline are down there at Ringo. Okay, so they're down there at the south end, and they call them step outs. Whether they're step outs or not, let you be the judge of that. But you can see where they are in the cross section over here on the right hand side. Okay, now notice that the distribution of copper, which is kind of shown in the light pastels and pinks and oranges and whatnot, doesn't quite form just a big blob like a porphyry would normally. Okay, it's discrete higher grade intervals. In fact, in the drill holes, you can see there are some very discrete high grade copper intervals within this. That's not a bad thing, guys. Like, this is kind of deep for an open pit. Like that section right there, I'm thinking, I'm not sure you're going to be able to dig a pit and grab that stuff down there. But for an underground mine, high grades, 2, 3, 4% copper, happy all day long. Like, treat it for what it is. It's a higher grade copper system, higher grade copper gold system, I should say. And to me, given the host rocks and the fact that they're not really directly associated with the porphyry, more of hosted by the carbonates there, I think this is an IOCG system. And more importantly, I think there's more to be found here. Okay. If you think of it more like that, maybe along strike, in and out of the section, something like that, we can find some more. And I want to see the company do that. Now, bear in mind, Rio Tinto and Ivanhoe have both acquired ground in this immediate district very aggressively. Okay, so I think people are recognizing these guys have something going here, but they're also looking at district scale potential. Those guys, Ivanhoe, Rio, are not stupid. They look at the district and how this might fit together. Maybe you have another Bisbee district here, and we're just not quite looking at it in that way yet. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I gotta watch the time here. 12:48 my time. Oh boy, I'm going to be in trouble. All right, Kingfisher. Kingfisher is, as announced, they're drilling. The way got shifted down one line. I don't know how that happened. They're drilling at their Highway 37 project. It breaks down the drilling that they're going to do in the targets. They're going to tackle that Williams porphyry copper gold system first and foremost here. I think they're going to test some other targets too, but that's their main focus. I talked about this probably 3 or 4 months ago after they kind of assimilated the whole land package here. And I'm just so excited to see Dustin and his team back to work and chasing this thing. I think this could be a huge discovery story for this current cycle, copper gold cycle. They're in the northern part of the Golden Triangle. They're not far from Galore Creek, Big Tech Newmont joint venture. They're not far from DT Gold, Newmont. They're not far from Redcrest, Newmont. Okay, like they're in the right part of the world, and I think these guys could hit it out of the park.